Question of the day: why are ballerinas always so unhinged in movies? Hi, I'm Cakie. I dropped out of film school after exactly 1 year, but I hope you'll stick around because I love watching movies and talking about them. There are countless letterbox lists dedicated to this specific trope. The quick answer is duality, and it'll be a reoccurring theme I bring up multiple times in this video. So today I want to explore how cinema has portrayed ballerinas and the world of ballet in general, especially in the psychological horror genres. To add a bit of flavor, I'm going to be bringing in a dancer's perspective, mine. I was a former competitive ballerina in the local company, certainly wasn't gonna go pro, but as both a dancer and avid movie watcher, I hope my personal experiences will bring some unique context. First, let me give you a quick rundown of what ballet is and where it came from. It began to emerge during the Italian Renaissance, somewhere around the 15th to 16th century. King Louis XIV of France helped popularize and standardize the dance form in his courts and even performed in several himself. This is why many ballet terms are in French. There are 5 basic positions in ballet. They're the building blocks of all the steps. Each one has their own unique arm and feet placement. One really important element is called turnout, which is basically a specific placement / rotation of your feet, but it really stems from your hips. So if you're in first position, a perfect turnout is considered 180 degrees. It's expected that you keep this turnout consistent while you're jumping or even walking across the stage. To go on point refers to a technique that requires the dancers to put all of their weight and support themselves via their toes. This is probably what most people think of when they think of ballet. On point is ballet, but not all ballet is on point. Most dancers don't start training to go on point until they're in their preteens or whenever their instructor determines if they're ready. You need to have strong foundation, strong technique already. You can't just jump into it. Contrary to what some people think, point shoes are not soft. The toe box area is really hard. There's layers of paper, fabric, and glue. But the back of the shoe is flexible. Satin ribbons are sewn on for extra support and tied around the upper ankle area. An easy way to tell if someone is a poser is if you see loose ribbons or if they tie it like this in the front or back. They love to do this in fashion shoots and it drives me crazy. It could be dangerous if a model is trying to use these shoes without proper training, and of course some films are guilty as well. To ease the friction of your toes against the shoe, you would use toe pads. These are made of materials like lamb's wool or silicone. Some of you might be asking, why wouldn't a dancer use the thickest ones she could find? It's because you need to feel the floor. It's a vague concept, but think about using gloves. Sure, a thicker one will protect your hands, but it's harder to do more precise things with them on. Even if you do everything right, blisters can still appear. Like any other sport, it takes a toll on your body. I thought it was normal to have horizontal ridges on your toenails and realized later it was trauma lines from doing point work. There are many classical ballet stories that are performed time and time again. You may be familiar with the Nutcracker or Swan Lake. Many of these ballets tend to have fairytale-like elements. Think whimsical but kind of fucked up vibes. La Sylphide is one of the world's oldest surviving ballets. It has air spirits, witches, and demons. Ozal features ghosts of young unmarried women who force men to dance to their deaths. The Rite of Spring features both a ritual of abduction and a virgin sacrifice. This is the one that caused a riot due to its unconventional approach. Jules Dapper has a great video on it. Then we have the iconic Swan Lake, where a princess is turned into a white swan by an evil sorcerer who then has his daughter, aka the Black Swan, seduce the prince. Traditionally, both roles are played by the same prima ballerina, and trust me, that is a lot. It's one of the most physically taxing choreographies out there. You have to worry about 32 fouettes in the 3rd act. There are many ballerina stereotypes in movies, and I'm going to highlight a few of them. Ballerinas are perfectionists. Like any other sport, it requires constant practice and dedication. These athletes push their bodies to the limits to achieve this elusive idea of perfection. It's not just checking off the boxes of technique, it's also about performing and truly embodying the character. This is a characteristic that storytellers can employ to give their characters a fatal flaw or inner turmoil. Ballerinas are regal, uptight, or the snobby rich girl. And I feel like a ballerina's posture has everything to do with this. They're always standing tall and have their chin like tilted up. So it kind of gives an air of, elegance and also a little bit of like snootiness, I'm better than you kind of thing. One example is Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday, who was actually a ballerina before she started acting. Hepburn plays the role of a princess so well because of the way she carries herself, which 100% came from her ballet training. Another factor is that ballet is expensive and historically linked to wealthy circles. It's a pricey hobby that's not accessible to all, and this lends itself well to the posh rich girl trope. The dainty weak trope is another one that's prevalent and also affects male ballet dancers. This trope likely exists because of the effortlessness of the movements and most likely the link to femininity. All these traits lead back to, you guessed it, duality. Hollywood compare a graceful ballerina with a hip-hop dancer who helps her loosen up. It's way more interesting if we have a seemingly dainty character with a dark and deadly personality underneath. A snobby rich ballerina can be a foil character to our quirky underdog main character. Ballerinas are super competitive and jealous of each other. Is there a hierarchy in companies? Yes. There's prima ballerinas, soloists, and corps de ballet, which is the lowest rank in a company. Do dancers get jealous of each other? Of course. But this competitiveness isn't limited to the ballet world. You can throw this element into a movie about sports, theater, or a regular school, and it would still make sense. This is another example of a storytelling tool that can drive the plot forward and create interesting dynamics. Even just looking at these 3 stereotypes, and there's a lot more out there, you can start to see why movies love to use the mentally unwell catty ballerina. Media loves to portray extremes for dramatic effect. They're not worried about accuracy, they're prioritizing the story or whatever theme they're trying to get across. These portrayals are often overblown, and this dramatization exists for many other professions in media. Think about how many times you've seen the dedicated, hardworking detective or evil, soulless lawyers. Zooming out a bit, I realized there are 2 types of movies where these tropes seem to pop up a lot. The first one is obviously horror movies, which features our mentally unwell girlies. And the second one is action movies featuring a trained assassin slash ballerina, aka our murder girlies. Warning, I will be spoiling the following movies. Instead of going over every single one, I'm choosing 3 tropes that have made their mark in the portrayal of ballet in cinema. Number 1 is physical stress, aka body horror. Number 2 is mental stress, which includes anything from perfectionist dancer, mean teacher, and jealousy between peers. And number 3 is supernatural undertones. Like I said earlier in the video, it all comes down to duality. It's easy to see why ballet is linked to horror. You have beautiful things, pirouettes, satin point shoes, and tutus, but there's also the ugly part: injuries, strict dance teachers, and competition. Combining these soft things with darker topics results in something unnerving or maybe even sinister. There's a sentence in this cracked article that reads, "Most great horror is all about the destruction of what is traditional, conservative, and middle class." This is another great reason why ballet works so well in horror. The dance form is full of rules and traditions, plus it thrives on everyone looking the same and achieving the proper technique. As a filmmaker, there are so many visual elements that you can use in a horror setting. You not only have the physical movement of the dancer with their jumps and turns, the camera can also focus on the hands or feet, which obviously play a huge part. Ballet is super theatrical with the dramatic makeup, elaborate stage sets, and beautiful costumes. All of these elements allow a film crew to craft strong visuals, which is why filmmakers can lean towards this art form. Physical stress. There's no argument that ballet is an active sport that requires a lot of practice. Here, your body is literally the art. Limbs are stretched to the limits, repetition is required to master precise footwork and seamlessly sync to the music, feet are put in unnatural positions to achieve an ideal look, weak stamina is not an option. Body horror is synonymous with ballet horror. Injuries are common and movies take great care to play it up. From your pas de deux partner dropping you or twisted ankles, there's a lot of things that can hurt you. I would be hard-pressed to find a scary movie that doesn't put emphasis on bloody toes. Nina Sayers in Black Swan has multiple scenes featuring her battered feet. The Fine Art of Love foreshadows its dark undertones by opening with a close-up of a ballerina's feet. The spot of blood is tiny at first but gradually spreads until the shoe is soaked. After Maureen is forced to dance at the party in Birds of Paradise, she cuts her feet on broken glass. Later on, she says that ballerinas are warriors of pain. Speaking of glass, that's also a common thing to find in your point shoes, according to movies apparently, like The American. In that same movie, Joy's shoe gets stained with blood even though she's only wearing ballet slippers. She also cuts her leg on something sharp while practicing in a dark warehouse-like room. And what it is, I don't know. That movie isn't horror, but it's certainly shot like one. 2018's Suspiria has an entire scene that jumps from Susie rehearsing and Olga trapped in a mirrored room. It's horrifying to watch Olga lose control of her body. With every step Susie does, the other dancer's body responds like a marionette puppet. While this remake isn't strictly ballet, the scene achieves the same effect if the dancer was on point. Both The Red Shoes and Black Swan, arguably the 2 most famous ballet movies, feature a ballerina going through it. To Vicky and Nina, ballet is their entire life, nothing else matters. They're portrayed as perfectionists. Vicky is torn between romance and ballet. In her mind, it's impossible for both to coexist in her life. This toxic thinking drives her to the brink. Nina is desperately trying to embody the white and black swan. The extreme effort bleeds into her whole existence, and eventually the lines blur. She doesn't know what's real anymore. At the end, both women experience the same tragic ending, jumping to their deaths while wearing pointe shoes. Many other movies also feature characters who are living with mental illnesses. Adriana from Bloody Ballet is being haunted by visions of her deceased parents and comes to find out she has a split personality. In Audition, Asami is a former ballerina who suffered abuse as a child. Her unresolved trauma causes her to hurt others who've wronged her. If we look at Black Swan, Nina's delusions progressively get stronger as the movie goes on. The one scene I won't forget is when she pulls out a black feather from her skin, signaling her transformation into the Black Swan. This mental anguish is sometimes paired with perfectionism in order to provide a way for the situation to escalate. If you have a character striving for this unattainable ideal, you can drive the story even further by putting roadblocks in front of them, and eventually getting them to hit their breaking point. Unfortunately, this results in careless portrayals of mental illnesses in order to set up the dramatic climax. Another common stereotype is a strict ballet teacher. They're usually presented as an uptight woman who won't hesitate to berate you, or a male teacher with nefarious intentions. In Suspiria, the teacher yells at her to keep going even though Susie is showing visible signs of distress. Goosebumps appeared on my skin when I watched Possession. Anna is correcting a young student with such force, it feels very, very wrong. The close-up of the student's face is off-putting because she's clearly in agony, but Anna is just staring intensely into the camera. Thomas in Black Swan takes advantage of the power dynamic between him and the dancers of the company. All the trauma Asami experiences in Audition stems from her dance teacher, who is also her stepfather. Our main character likely wants the big role and they're willing to climb over others to get it. Glass somehow always gets sprinkled in pointe shoes. The desire for perfection and unwillingness to show weakness, especially during an audition or performance, causes them to continue dancing even though they're in pain. Paranoia hangs over them like a heavy cloud. Which one of your fellow dancers sabotaged you? And if you know who did it, how can you prove it? While searching on YouTube and Letterboxd, I saw some shorts and B-movies that displayed these stereotypes. TV shows like Flesh and Bone and Tiny Pretty Things feature emotionally disturbed dancers, according to their Wikipedia plot summaries. I have not personally watched these, so I cannot give proper commentary here, but it's clear the emotionally disturbed and horror ballerina trend is widespread in both mainstream and indie scenes. We can't talk about ballet horror without bringing in some creepy supernatural things. Like I mentioned earlier, fantastical elements are often intertwined with popular ballet stories. In Abigail, a young ballerina gets kidnapped, but her captors don't know that she's a dangerous vampire who is immune to garlic and crosses. Live It is a similar story, with people breaking into a house and finding out that the daughter, Anna, is a vampire ballerina with a strict dance teacher mom, who is also a vampire. The vampire and ballet crossover isn't anything new. The original 1931 Dracula movie featured the iconic Swan Lake theme playing over the opening credits. With the help of a music box, you can summon the Sugar Plum Fairy, a young girl with a nightmare-inducing face seen in Cabin in the Woods. Claire is an American ballerina in Europe who slowly gets possessed by a ballerina ghost from the past. It's not really a horror movie, but there is a giant-ass swan hiding in a room that needs to be killed in order to release her spirit. So, similar to Aronofsky's Black Swan, Etoile heavily relies on the white swan, black swan imagery to push the light and dark motifs. Both Suspiria movies have a coven of witches at the center of their story. The original movie showcases the strange occurrences that occur in the school, many of them resulting in untimely deaths. In the remake, Susie reveals herself to be Mother Suspiriorum and ends up killing the witches in a beautiful, blood-filled ending. There's nothing more ghostly than a ballerina gliding across the floor. When a dancer spins, it feels like she could do it forever. The image of perfection we see on the stage is achieved through blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe there is something inherently supernatural about ballet after all. This next trope isn't as well developed, but it's still easy to picture an assassin/spy ballerina, the beautiful but deadly woman lurking in the shadows like in film noirs. Throw in a tragic past, seduction scenes and guns, and you're all set. It could be argued that this trope is an offshoot of the femme fatale character. They certainly have more similarities than differences. Spies are associated with glamour, and ballet fits into that world so neatly. Plus, ballerinas are strong athletes, so there's existing traits that can play up the assassin trope. When we picture a spy in our minds, why do some of us picture an Eastern European person, more specifically a Russian? The country has some of the most renowned companies like the Bolshoi Ballet. Many Russian prima ballerinas have etched their name in history, like Anna Pavlova, who's known for her solo dance, The Dying Swan. During the Cold War, touring ballet companies acted as ambassadors of sorts to ease tensions between the US and Russia with a dash of propaganda. There are also real-life examples of Russian dancers fleeing their home country to places like the US. It's highly likely that these dancers were watched no matter what their personal opinions were. In movies like White Nights and 1982's Nutcracker feature ballerinas turned defectors. It's possible this trope pulled inspiration from real-life people. Mata Hari is a quintessential dancer/spy. She was sentenced to death by the French who suspected she was working for Germany, but there are some who claim she was innocent even today. Josephine Baker smuggled information to the Allies on sheet music in between singing and dancing. Then we have Marina Lee, a blonde ballerina who was also a Nazi spy, according to documents released by British intelligence. None of these women are Russian, but we know that media loves to combine everything. The movie Red Sparrow is basically this entire trope in a nutshell. The story follows Dominika, a Russian dancer who cannot perform anymore due to a traumatizing injury. She goes to a special training school for sparrows, aka operative agents. There she learns how to seduce targets and a variety of other useful spy skills. Black Widow's story is very similar to this. The Red Room is a Soviet-Russian program that takes young girls and trains them to become killers. Natasha's vision in Avengers Age of Ultron shows a room of ballerinas intercut with a younger version of herself shooting at a target. In Avengers Endgame, we can see ballet shoes hanging off a chair in the scene where she talks to Captain America. The main character of Assassin's Run is Maya, a Russian ballerina who ends up being framed and must fight to save her daughter. Her fight scenes utilize her ability and strength. There's literally a scene where she does a triple pirouette kick and knock someone down. While the John Wick spin-off movie Ballerina isn't out yet, it's been plagued with reshoots and a troubled production. We get a small glimpse in John Wick 3. He's gone to ask the Ruska Roma for help, and a single ballerina dances on stage while they talk. They walk through the academy, which is filled with orphans training how to fight and dance. All we know about this new movie is that Anya de Armas plays a ballerina assassin who's out to kill people who murdered her family. We won't see it until 2025, but if I'm a betting woman, I would expect a lot of guns and cool tattoos. She's going to kill a lot of people and look elegant while doing it. Ballet is not only beautiful, it's dark and oftentimes horrifying. Or at least films want you to think that. Movies love juxtaposition, which is why this dance form is very popular in horror and psychological genres. The famous ballet movies really stand out and wouldn't be the same without this world as a backdrop. Where else can you see someone dancing on their tiptoes in bloody satin shoes? Or people dressed up as swans. While I'm not always happy with the portrayal, I will give any ballet movie a watch because I love the art form. One takeaway I hope you received today is that the portrayal of ballerinas in movies is not the norm. Ballerinas are mostly well-adjusted people. Are there serious issues in ballet? Yes. Real life is more nuanced and generally less darker than movies will have you believe. Before I end this video, I wanted to shout out Ballet Macabre from the Movers Shakers podcast. It's a wonderful mini-series that recaps prominent ballet movies and pairs them with dancers' perspectives. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend giving it a listen because it dives deeper into specific movies. As always, my sources are linked below. Subscribe if you want, but only if you want.